But thanks for joining anyway. We're going to talk about aches and pains for women going through menopause who run, because this is actually a really important thing for us to be aware of, okay? And what I'm going to focus this session on is how you know which things you can safely ignore and which ones definitely not to ignore, because they can be signs that something is wrong, that's being exacerbated, caused as well, or made worse by your running, sorry to say. But they are things that could potentially lead to more serious issues in the future, and things that can take a long time to resolve. We might have in the past experienced things like, pulled muscles. Pulled muscles are really easy. They're not very nice. It's very sudden. It's very painful. We really cannot move around, but within a week or two, we're back to normal. What I really want to put a focus on today are the little things in the background that don't seem dramatic compared to when you pull a muscle, but are actually going to cause us bigger, more serious long-term problems. And when I say serious, I just mean because they are harder to resolve and take longer to resolve, and really can stop you running for very long periods of time. So it's a really well-known symptom, as I say, to have general muscle and joint aches in menopause. And usually, the cause is a combination of declining estrogen. Estrogen has a protective effect on inflammation. So inflammation, when we have less estrogen, starts to increase, and that can affect our joints and our muscles. From a joint point of view, we also have fluid in our joints called synovial fluid, and the lack of estrogen has a sort of drying effect. So that fluid can be impacted, and same around, in tendons and muscles, there's less fluid, less pliability, and that can be what some of the aches and pains can be caused by. And what can help with that is mobility, keeping the joint moving. When we actually move a joint, we stimulate the production of that synovial fluid. So regularly moving and putting your joints through a full range of motion can really help with that. And also eating an anti-inflammatory diet. If you choose to take HRT, that can help, but there's a lot of foods that we can add into our diet that can also help reduce inflammation. Oily fish, nuts, ginger, turmeric, black pepper, there's a lot of things, herbs, spices. Eating a big wide variety of vegetables and fruits and plant-based foods is really useful. So that's the thing that we just need to be aware of from this general aches and pains. And I should also say, if there's anything that's just really bothering you that doesn't feel right, you should always go to your GP. I think this can be a time of our lives when there's different things cropping up all the time, and we don't feel like we know or understand our bodies anymore, and we can really throw us. And I don't think it's worth us just not having that reassurance that something's okay. All right, so I just want to say that as well. Other things that can crop up as well that you don't have to worry about is DOMS, and that stands for delayed onset muscle soreness, and that's very definitely felt in your muscles, only in your muscles, not your joints. And that would be something that you would feel typically 1 or 2 days after a workout. And usually it's if you're new to exercise, or you've had a bit of a break, or you may be doing something new, or you've increased in the intensity, you've done a harder run, you've gone longer, or you've done a lot of downhill. Downhill can really leave you with quite aching calves in the next day. Typically that goes after 2 to 3 days, and the more you do those things, the less that becomes a problem. It usually is just when you start something new. And things that can help with that are giving yourself proper recovery time, 2 or 3 days before your next workout to just let that settle, keep being well hydrated, keeping active, gentle activity. So low intensity activity can just help, reduce that pain and just ease the movement a little bit. Warm baths can help, massage, magnesium can help, and stretching, mobility. You also want to make sure, because the fact that you've got this muscle soreness in this context is that you have put your muscle through more work than it's used to. And that means that's a good thing, that type of stress. But what will happen after that is your body wants to then repair and rebuild that muscle to make it stronger for next time. And it needs protein to do that, and good nutrition. So really make sure that your diet's good. And I think generally with these, you know, aches and pains, it's about, you know, good self-care. You know, we are going through a very big transition from when we go through menopause. It's affecting every aspect of our bodies. So a nutritious diet, adequate sleep or rest if you're not sleeping, trying to balance out stress. It can be hard to remove stress, but there are a lot of things that we can do to balance stress. So just general self-care is important. So I want to talk about some of the symptoms that runners shouldn't ignore that I wish someone had told me about 2 years ago. And you know, this is not that you're doing something wrong or that you've just neglected a part of your training. It's happened to me and I was doing training. It's just really that our bodies are changing and we just need to be aware of these, and that's what I want this video to do. I want it to make you aware that these things can happen and they can really just come out of the blue. You know, I was going through a period where I was having amazing runs and I was feeling fantastic. I was thinking, oh great, I'm out of menopause, I'm all the worst bits behind me, I'm just I've gone back to being 30, and I was having some fantastic runs, and then all of a sudden these things start to crop up. But they don't have to, you know, and there's a lot we can do to actually protect ourselves against them. But these are some symptoms that we shouldn't ignore. Stiffness in your feet and ankles, your calves, in the morning or after sitting for a while. So like in the morning when you get out of bed. And what's interesting about this is it can feel quite stiff, but then within a few minutes it's gone. Now, this isn't necessarily really serious, but it is an early warning sign that your tendons are under stress. And I experienced this for a while, and because and I mean months, and because, you know, once I got out of bed, all the soles of my feet were really stiff, my ankles, the bottoms of my calves, and it would be really strange because I'd almost stand up when I got out of bed and then almost want to not fall over again, but I just wasn't expecting it. So it wasn't painful. I didn't have any pain when I was asleep. And then pretty much by the time I'd walked out of my bedroom and headed downstairs, it was gone and forgotten. But it's a sign, it's an early warning sign of your tendons being under stress. And that's to do with, you know, largely impacted by estrogen and the way that's changing us. But it can also be to do with what's under all of these things is a change in our muscle strength and power. Okay, then we go up a level and we've got a sort of a persistent low level pain not in the belly of our muscles, but more at the edge. The belly of your muscle is the big part of your muscle. So if you imagine your biceps, that's the big part of your muscle. That's where you'll feel DOMS. At the end is maybe up near into the joints is where we start to notice pain. So that can be in your ankles, across your knees, in your hip. It can be painful to lie on your side, or right high up in your hamstring, sort of almost deep into your buttocks. There can be sort of little niggly pains there that again can feel quite low level, can come and go, but this is sign that this is tendinitis starting to develop, or bursitis is quite often referred to for the hip. And again, this won't go. This will just continue to get worse. And this is where runners are maybe more vulnerable to this. It probably doesn't affect you if you don't run so much because you're not putting your body under the strain of running, but this will start to build up and become more present and eventually will be enough to stop you running. And you don't want to get to that point because by the time this is a problem, you're in for months of really consistent, physiotherapy or rehabilitation and strength training protocols to help you get back to running strong. It's possible, but it's tedious. And it means you can't run as much, so it's a pain in the neck or it's a pain in the butt, wherever. So that's something, again, that we need to watch out for. And then the other one is joint pain and swelling, and that are sore joints now. This is quite typically, you can maybe feel it in your hips, but more common in knees. And that would be where you've got maybe quite a lot of pain, swelling, and you really notice that you can feel it on you running. It's worse when you stop. It may take a few days to go away and you're just sort of really feeling that all the time. Causes for that can be osteoarthritis, where we are wearing away the protective coating on the bone through age, and maybe it can be to do with the not great form and the muscle, the joint not being sort of not being housed. How do I explain this? If it fits into a nice socket and it's the joint, and if it's not lined up because there's some dysfunction in running, it can just sort of wear away certain sections, and that can be really painful. And it's a general aging thing anyway, that's sort of really quite well known, and knees are really vulnerable to it. And then, or it can be caused by increasing volume too quickly. So if you're running further, but you're not giving yourself time to adjust to that and going up too quickly, or running, more intense quickly. If you're doing strength training, it can happen as well if you go up with the weights too quickly before you're ready. And that's something that we don't want to ignore, because we don't want to just ignore joint pain. That can cause us problems as well. So what can we do with these things? Because we don't want to stop running, and it's a shame, because they are so preventable and so treatable. Now, I want you to think about what's happening. Quite often when we've got a problem in an isolated area, like your hip, like your knee, like your ankle, all your attention goes to there. You might get some physio that puts you some exercises to sort of move around that area. But what we have to think about now is the bigger picture, because there's not just a problem in one side, there's probably a few problems in other areas creeping up that we're not aware of yet. Because whatever is changing in one area, those changes are systemic. They're happening all over our bodies. And what's happening is our tendons are becoming weaker. There's some degeneration that's happening because of lack of estrogen, and also our muscles. And we've got lots of muscles. We've got big muscles that we obviously know about in our backsides, our biggest one, and our quads and our hamstrings. But we've also got lots of little tiny muscles that we can forget about, that are doing really, really important jobs for runners. In our feet, in our ankles, in our calves. We can think about our calves, the muscles at the back, but what about the muscles at the side and the front? These are really important as well. And over time, what's happening is we're losing strength, we're losing power, not just in our big muscles, but in all these really little important muscles as well. And we're also losing a sense of what's called proprioception, our ability to sort of sense and get feedback and be able to control and coordinate our movements with good control and good form. And these are some things that we know are changing and that are related to aging. And unless we build them back into our training programs, we're going to lose them. They're going to get worse. So that's something that's happening. And what's quite specific to runners as well is, because running is so repetitious, we're doing the same thing over and over again. Over time, we can develop muscle imbalances, and that means some muscles work harder than others. And in runners, it can be quite common that it's the front, so quads can work harder than hamstrings, for example, and we can be what's called quad dominant. And part of this isn't to do with running so much, but it's also to do with the fact that we sit down a lot. So all the muscles along the back of our body can be quite stretched and weak. Now, and things like our hip flexors and our quads get strong and overactive. Now, when we get overactive muscles in the front, that can actually inhibit muscles in the back from working. So now what we're doing, we're running, but we're not using all the muscles that we need to run in the correct way. So we might be running, and let's imagine that only half of our muscles are actually helping us. So what we're doing is we're putting a huge amount of stress through some muscles while other muscles are slacking off and really not working and not helping. And that's creating these sort of pinch points in our bodies that are starting to get really hammered, because they're having to do more work to make up for other muscles that aren't doing the work, and often they're not designed to do so much work. If our feet, I don't know if you noticed this, I noticed my feet becoming more ploddy, and as if I was sort of less able to move and feel the sensations in my feet. Our feet do a really important job, and our calves do a really important job that would take the load off our Achilles. So when your feet aren't working properly, your Achilles have to work harder, and that's what starts to cause issues. For high hamstring tendinopathy, you might feel that your posture's not good and you bend forward a little bit, and you're sort of running without using your glutes and your hamstrings. So in that position, we're stretching our hamstrings too much, and that's causing problems at the top end of the hamstrings, which is after that repeated pounding, mile after mile, that starts to become inflamed. So what can we do? Well, we have to strength train. We have to make all the parts around the affected areas as strong as possible. Okay, that means building strong feet, strong ankles, strong calves. We have to build up the muscles around our knees. We have to build up the muscles around our hips, our glutes, our core. And we also have to pay, like I said, particular attention to the muscles on the back, because these tend to be weaker. We also have to improve our ability to control our movement, which is basically our coordination. And that's the control that we have around how our feet and hips move and respond and steer us when we're running. This is something, like I say, that goes with age. Now, we have to train that back in. This is different to strength training, okay? Because we need to train control when we move. When we're doing strength training, we are working in more of a fixed position and gradually lifting heavier and heavier muscles to build our muscles back up, to build that strength back. But when we're trying to improve our control and our coordination, we are training movements. So I'm going to cover this off in a separate video. But what can you do next? Okay, so if you recognize some of these, don't ignore them, please. Take some action, okay? And the key thing that you need to do, if you are not doing any strength training at the moment, is start. Now, there are videos in the classroom part of school that you can access for free that will give you some strength training programs that will help you get started, okay? So use those. You also, everyone who joins gets a free call with me, a free 30-minute call with me. You can book that call and we can have a chat. You can go through it, and I can maybe, if you've watched some of those videos and you just need to feel a little bit overwhelmed and want to get clarity on what actually to prioritize or how to fit that in your life if you're busy, then I can help you with that too as well, so you can book that call. But the key thing is, we don't ignore this. If you're like me and you are determined to keep running strong, to stay mobile, to stay active, and be the sort of 80-year-old woman who's still running, maybe not an Ironman, that's not on my list. Or maybe it will be, who knows, but still going out and doing things and not worried about falling over and aches and pains and feels really strong, then we have to start to do this. We have to start to do this now. And one of the things that people worry about is they haven't got time, they've got too much on. It doesn't take a lot of time. You've found 18 minutes to watch this. You don't have to watch it next week. You can spend 18 minutes doing a workout instead. And even doing 1 to 2 strength training workouts, or breaking it down and doing 5 to 10 minutes every day of some of the key exercises that you will find in the classroom will make a big difference, okay? In fact, I would probably rather you did a little bit every day than just a bigger session every now and a week, because that's going to get you further. Once you start doing small things, you find it easier to add on little bits. So incrementally, we start to build this up, okay? But you're never going to need to spend more time in the gym than you do running. That's the good news. A little bit of the right type of training can go a long way, and it's so important, okay? So really think about that. And if you have any questions after watching this video, feel free to put them in the comments, but check out the school, book in a free call if you haven't done already. I'll put the link to do that underneath. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.